Lee Mendelson Film Productions returns with another outstanding release in their series of the original Peanuts Charlie Brown TV show soundtrack albums featuring the music of Vince Guaraldi, with a 50th anniversary edition of the 1975 TV special, the 13th in the series of those CBS Peanut specials, Be My Valentine, Charlie Brown. This features 22 tracks from the special, some of them not heard in full in the special. Sometimes in the special, the audio would get, the music track would get mixed down under dialogue. Here, this is the first time you can really hear and appreciate this music. This music is really good. These releases are so listenable on their own as evocative of, hey, I'm in the mood of Charlie Brown. Hey, I'm listening to the Peanuts sound. It's like I'm watching the show. And they're just good music on their own. This one, for myself, was maybe the first one in this series that I've heard that at times didn't even sound like a Charlie Brown soundtrack. Some of it absolutely does, but some of it just sounds like a really cool, kick-ass, like lounge kind of music album, like of the 70s, like an early 70s lounge, kind of groovy lounge music. Some of it, I was saying while we're listening to it, I'm like, if you told me this was a cut from a Pam Grier movie, if this was some soundtrack cue from Coffee or Foxy Brown, I would be like, oh yeah, it's a great movie. It sounds great. I mean, it's got that kind of vibe to it sometimes. So it's a good album on its own to listen to. It's not just like, it doesn't just feel like background music necessarily, unless it's background music for a groovy lounge in the early 70s. It's available on LP, which is what I'm going to talk about here and show you in as much detail as I can. CD and digital, all of these are available usually in those three formats. And the packaging is just fantastic. Like, these releases, I'm going to sound like a total shill. They just make me happy. Getting them, looking at them, listening to them, the quality being so good on these, the bass sounds so good on these. You can really hear the individual instruments really well. They're mastered so well. It's just, it's amazing. And this is the first time this has ever been released. Like, I think in the old days, from my recollection at least, I'm no expert on the matter. I just grew up in the 70s and 80s watching these on TV and really loving these Charlie Brown specials and that whole Peanuts world that was, sadly back then, I mean, sadly for us now, it was so much of a bigger thing then than it is now, but it still exists in our consciousness. It just isn't up front like it used to be. These weren't always released. Like, as far as I remember, Charlie Brown Christmas was an album that you would see here and there, but otherwise these, I think this is the Lee Mendelson Film Productions, run by the sons of Lee Mendelson, the Mendelsons, as it were. This is the first time a lot of these are coming out, or at least in this kind of quality, in this kind of deluxe edition. So there's, as far as the music goes on this, a lot of synth and electric piano, which is a cool vibe. And that's another thing too about these releases, is that a lot of them, and the liner notes really get into this, the liner notes are fabulous. They get into how Guaraldi was doing something different musically at the time himself, and he brought that to these soundtracks. So each one has a little bit of a different vibe. He'll revive some of the iconic Peanuts cues occasionally. In this one, there's a version of Linus and Lucy that, until I read on the track list that that's what it was arranged so differently you wouldn't even know that that's what it is. But it's just, it's very smooth jazz, very loungy, very laid back. It has like adaptations of Chopin and Bach, Beethoven in some of the tracks. I can't say often enough, these releases just make me happy. I'm not going to go track by track on this. I'm not a musicologist. I'm just a guy who loves movies, who loves old TV, who loves Peanuts, and who is a record collector too, and loves these albums. It sounds a bit different than the previous scores. It has a different vibe all its own, which is really cool. And I listened to it twice. Like, it was really good. So let me show you the packaging again, because if I'm not going to go track by track and I'm not going to break it down musicologistly, I can at least show you what you're going to get if you buy this. So this is Valentine themed, and I love that they do this. They did one, it was You're Not Elected, Charlie Brown, and it was right around the time of the election, a little bit before, and all the packaging or the extras was themed to that. So you get, I'm sorry, it slaps you in the face, it's so exciting. You get, it comes in a little, like a thin plastic wrapper there. You get the little OB strip on the side with all the selling points, produced on bio vinyl, which uses less petroleum, restored and digitally remastered from recovered 16-track session tapes to a 192 kilohertz 24-bit master. We've got liner notes by album producers Sean and Jason Mendelson, the titular sons of Mendelson, and Guaraldi biographer Derek Bang, art from the special and rare photographs. You get, what else does this say? 22 tracks never before released, so we said. And then on the back, you can see these are the previous albums. So this opens up. It's a little self-sealing plastic slipcover sleeve, slides on out. As I say, it's got the little, I call them the obi strip like they do in Japan. That comes right off, so that doesn't necessarily block the art. So the artwork, very simple on these, but it's very attractive. It's just, I'm a guy who grew up in the 2D animation world, the 2D cartoon world and comics, when it wasn't a lot of shading and things were just simpler and purer art-wise. So I just kind of love the look of that. In the back, really cool. You've got your track list, side 1 and side 2. They do designate bonus mixes and alternate takes. So I'll read you the track list if this means anything. Side 1, you have Heartburn Waltz, which is a theme that recurs over and over again, but it doesn't always sound the same every time. Heartburn Waltz Reprise, or Reprise as it were. Linus and Lucy, you'd never know that that's what it is. Piano Sonata number 20 in G major. Heartburn Waltz again. Linus and Lucy, Paw Pet Overture. Freddie's Mood. That's Chopin's Nocturne in E flat major. So you don't really want to hear all these things. But side B, you've got the bonus tracks, which are alternate mixes, bonus mixes, and things like that. So it's a really good selection. It's very listenable. Sometimes you listen to a soundtrack album and I always bring up, and this is going to be the only review of this that brings up the Hard Boiled soundtrack. Sometimes I'll listen to something and I love the movie and you love the soundtrack when you're watching the movie, but you listen to the soundtrack album and there are these long sections that are just tones or drones, and it's not really listenable. It's not listenable as a thing by itself. It might set a mood at best. This sounds great. This would work great as like a jazz or a funky jazz or lounge album if you just separated it from being Charlie Brown related anyway. So we open it up, and inside we have the liner notes, which as you can see are voluminous. They get into the creation. All of these releases will tell you where Vince Guaraldi was at musically at the time, who he was playing with, who was on the album, interview quotes from people who were there in the recording of the album and how they recorded it. So it gets into the nitty-gritty of the instruments that were used, the techniques, the musical styles, but also which, when this special was released and what goes on in the special. So it really breaks it down. That's Sean Mendelson notes. That's the back, actually. The front, again, just simple artwork from the show, which is great. You get a Jason Mendelson intro there. You open it up, and this is crazy. You get like a lot of information, and then you get stills from the episode, and then you get photos of the guys in the band in the studio. That's Vince Guaraldi there at the piano. Session note, the track, the original tapes boxes, and shots of the guys. So like, if you ever wondered what the Charlie Brown music sounds like and you had an image in your head, it's a bunch of hippies, bunch of San Francisco hippies. And it's so good. So what's the record look like? This edition, a lot of times these will come out in multicolored vinyl, or you'll have your option of vinyl, or they'll re-release it in vinyl, they'll re-release it in picture disc. So the one I got here, it's just black vinyl. But if you look at the label, it's got Snoopy on the label. And what I love too here is I've learned this. I don't know if I've seen this special probably since I was a kid, but I learned in reading this see that little guy right there? That little guy right there, that is a artist's rendering of Vince Guaraldi that's used in the special. Apparently during the end credits, Snoopy is playing with some hand puppets as he does in the special itself. And there's one that references Vince Guaraldi, which I thought was rather nice. So an excellent release from Lee Mendelson Film Productions. I hope they keep coming out with these. I hope they're able to keep finding the master tapes and doing this. I don't know what the plan is, if they're doing these to coincide with holidays, one a year or a couple a year. I don't know if they're doing these as the masters arise. I don't know if they're doing these to highlight scores that sound different from each other. I don't know, but these things are a treasure. These things make me so happy. I love that these things keep coming out. I would recommend, if you're a fan of the Charlie Brown specials or Guaraldi or this kind of music, pick one up. If you pick one up and you like it, you will like the rest of them. Available now on LP, CD, and digital from Lee Mendelson Film Productions is the 50th anniversary edition soundtrack of Be My Valentine, Charlie Brown.